Asterisk asterisk, a little flutter of the heart, asterisk asterisk. It's been 6 years since we broke up. My first love has now become a principal dancer in a ballet troupe. When we met again, he unexpectedly took off his ballet costume in front of me, and I was so flustered that I dropped the divorce certificate I had just received that morning. I felt utterly mortified, but he smiled and said, "I must be really important to you if you had to get divorced just to see one of my performances." 30 days ago, I filed for divorce from my boyfriend of 5 years. Alfred Josh and I had a secret marriage. We were together since high school, and got married right after college. The reason for the divorce was that I discovered he was cheating. Alfred Josh is usually very meticulous. He never makes mistakes with website likes, delivery records, or shopping carts. I found a clue in a review online. One day, I borrowed his phone to look up repair services, and found a bookmark for a net cafe called Dodo Tang. This net cafe is located in a county town 30 kilometers away from the city. It seemed to have been open for at least 10 years, and had no reviews. I knew this net cafe was owned by the father of Alfred Josh's first love. At that moment, the 5-year delicate balance between us was shattered. I pretended to have lost something, and went to that cafe to check the surveillance footage. Indeed, after spending an entire afternoon, I saw a video of Alfred Josh and Xenia Judd kissing and being affectionate. A month ago, I officially filed for divorce from Alfred Josh. Although we had been in a relationship for a long time, we had only been married for a few months, and at our age, there was nothing to divide. When I proposed the divorce, Alfred Josh was silent for a few seconds, before simply saying, "Okay." He didn't even ask why, and I didn't explain. We both understood without words. 5 years was enough to drain the last bit of affection between us. 30 days later, I received the divorce certificate, and was waiting for a ride outside the Civil Affairs Bureau. Calmly, I put the divorce certificate back in my bag. At that moment, I saw 2 tickets. They were for the Russian ballet's performance of Swan Lake. The tickets were a reward from my company. During college, Alfred Josh and I studied drama arts. Although we were poor, we developed a love for musical theater. The cheapest ticket was around $600. We used to boast that once we made money, we'd buy the best seats in the front row, and count the 32 fouet turns in the Black Swan scene, and see which ballet troupe was the strongest. Now we could afford the tickets, but the performance date happened to be the same day we got the divorce certificate. Fate can be quite ironic. In the end, I brought my friend, Da Ching, to accompany me. She didn't know about my secret marriage to Alfred Josh, or that I was getting divorced today. When we arrived, she kept complaining about her unfinished PowerPoint presentation, and said she couldn't appreciate highbrow art like this. As it turned out, even tickets, worth 2,000 or 3,000 didn't stop Da Ching from dozing off in the front row. It wasn't until the lead male dancer, Prince Siegfried, made his entrance from backstage that she suddenly widened her eyes. Wow! The male lead, is he in amazing shape or what? I was like. The first scene of Swan Lake is the ball scene, which does include several solo fouet turns and jumps. In ballet, male dancers' leotards are tight, which makes it look quite awkward. Frequent ballet goers usually don't focus on this, but Da King's outburst made me look too. For almost 2 hours, I just listened to Da King's reactions, and missed out on the famous 32 fouet turns in the Black Swan scene, even forgetting to count how many turns there were. After the curtain call, Da Ching insisted on going backstage for photos with the performers. The backstage area was crowded and chaotic, and she left me behind. Usually, backstage access is restricted, so I tried to find an empty room to hide. But when I opened the door, my heart nearly leapt out of my chest. Inside the room was a tall, muscular man. He was taller than most Asians, with very fair skin. He was standing in front of a mirror removing his makeup, and given the tightness of his leotard, I wasn't sure if he had taken it off, or not. But I did see something particularly striking, white, and visually impactful. A butt. I'm sorry. I was so startled that I turned and tried to leave. But just as we were about to exit, the man slowly said 2 words. Zoe Michelson. My hand froze on the door handle. The voice sounded familiar, but I didn't dare think too deeply. You were staring at me, and my friend during the performance, and now you're barging into the male dressing room. It's been 6 years, and you've done quite well for yourself. Hearing the voice, it felt like something was about to explode in my head. Carrie Petty. Is that really you? His build and voice seemed familiar, but with stage makeup, even from the front row, I couldn't be sure. I instinctively turned around and saw the shocking sight. You, why are you turned around? He was in the middle of putting on his pants, so I didn't see much. But that one glimpse confirmed it, he was completely naked. Carrie Petty looked calm and said, "Isn't this what you wanted to see?" I didn't. I came to see a ballet. Then why did you get divorced to see me? I fumbled to prove my point by pulling out the ticket, but in my panic, a maroon booklet dropped to the floor. The sound of it hitting the ground was like the end of happiness. It was the divorce certificate I had just received that morning. I was momentarily stunned. I could sense that he had a brief moment of silence as well. He hadn't put on his top half yet, and slowly walked over, not asking much, but bending down to pick up the document and glance at it. October the 21st, today. He closed the booklet with a smirk in his eyes, and said, "You really went to the trouble of getting divorced just to see my performance." I felt a mix of emotions. To prove I wasn't too embarrassed, I offered to buy him a meal. But Carrie Petty, with his social prowess, replied, "Sure, you owe me a meal. Why not today?" I awkwardly agreed. Carrie Petty and I had known each other since our teenage years. 6 years ago, during winter break of our senior year in high school, he said he was going abroad for studies, and we went out once. He treated me to a meal, and we haven't seen each other since. I did owe him a meal, so I took him to a restaurant near the Grand Theater. The exterior looked quite modest, a wooden hut with a cloth banner, simple and unadorned. I thought the average cost per person would be around 100 yuan. But when we sat down and I looked at the menu, I was shaking. I calculated that if Carrie Petty's appetite was similar to mine, just to get a bit full, the average cost would be around 3,000 yuan. What kind of families dine here? I sat next to Carrie Petty, trying to remain calm. You must be starving after dancing for 2 hours. What do you like to eat? Anything's fine, you decide. He didn't take the menu but kept looking at me. I ordered nervously. 2 servings of cod roe, white fish roe spring rolls, 4 skewers of chicken, and 1 bowl of plain rice. After ordering a bunch of incomprehensible dishes, I turned and saw Carrie Petty smiling. "What are you laughing at?" "Nothing, just that you seem quite heavy." "Heavy?" I looked at my arms and legs. "I'm not heavy, I'm only 90 pounds. I realized that I had just ordered. Are you saying I have heavy tastes? Actually, I didn't even know what I had ordered. The ingredients had many fancy names I didn't understand. Carrie Petty then said, 3 words, I meant desires. My face flushed with anger. He smiled and picked up his chopsticks, desires in the culinary sense. Rounded up, it's still heavy. I had no idea what he meant and tried to act sophisticated. You probably haven't seen much. Japanese food is very light. He didn't call me out, just nodded thoughtfully. Later, I went home and looked up what cod roe and chicken lantern are online, and I felt mortified. Knowledge informed me, cod roe is fish testes, and chicken lanterns are chicken ovaries. I had ordered all those things. After returning home, I stared at the TV in a daze. Although I had exchanged contact information with Carrie Petty, we didn't stay in touch. Then Alfred Josh called me. Xenia Judd is back. I said, oh, thinking he didn't know I was aware of their affair, and he continued, I get along well with her. She heard about what happened and wants to meet you. I was puzzled. Seriously? You're having an affair and now bringing Xenia Judd to show off? I was losing my composure, and almost instinctively called Carrie Petty. Hey, can you help me tonight? Sure. Carrie Petty's voice was noisy, like a party was happening. I shouted, my ex-husband is bringing his mistress to dinner. Can you pretend to be my boyfriend to help me out? Alfred Josh's affair had given me the idea to bring Carrie Petty to show him that I too had moved on. Let him see Carrie Petty's ballet legs and get jealous. My decision turned out to be right. Given Alfred Josh's understanding of me, this, rent a boyfriend, would be less impactful than Carrie Petty. Because Carrie Petty and I were once married, albeit in a game. Alfred Josh wouldn't believe I'd be unfaithful with anyone but Carrie Petty. We met in middle school through an online game. To complete a mission, we got married in the game. Later, in 2012, a browser game became popular. During computer classes, our whole class secretly played it. One day, Carrie Petty asked me to play this game, and prepared an account for me. I was naive, and didn't think much of it. When I logged in during class, the whole school went crazy. Carrie Petty was quite famous at our school, because he was the top spender on the server, although his skills weren't great. His ID was Little Scorpion, until one day, an account named Little Dumb Fish surpassed him as the new top spender. That account was the one he prepared for me. So rumors spread that a girl named Zoe Michelson from our class was the girlfriend of ballet prince Carrie Petty. What's more explosive was the claim that he spent 500,000 yuan on my account. We were just in middle school, 10 years ago. What did 500,000 yuan even mean? I was naive, thinking that spending 500 yuan would be enough to top the spender list. And who would spend 500,000 yuan on a small game account? I couldn't believe it and thought someone was trying to bully me, so I didn't log in again. I remember telling Carrie Petty I was quitting, and he was angry for days. He typed furiously in the game, "I went through all this trouble to get you the account, and you just quit. Do you think money grows on trees?" I replied quietly, "I'll just sell it for you." Carrie Petty asked, "How much?" I said, 50 yuan. "I'll transfer it to you." Carrie Petty replied with 3 words, F***CKU. Although I never sold the account, I didn't play again due to the upcoming exams. In high school, Carrie Petty went abroad to study ballet, which he had excelled at since childhood. Later, I met Alfred Josh, and he ended up with Xenia Judd. And that brings us to today. During the 5 years I was with Alfred Josh, he would always get upset when Carrie Petty was mentioned. He would say, "Carrie Petty, just relying on his family's money. That little rich kid will be eliminated by society sooner or later." Though he claimed to despise Carrie Petty, he was actually envious and resentful. So, seeing the 4 of us in this situation now, I'm not surprised at all. In the elegant, high-end restaurant, Alfred Josh and Xenia Judd sat across from me. It was their choice of place, the most upscale Western restaurant in the city. Locally, it's rumored that the restaurant is owned by the wealthiest family in the province, so it's very exclusive and expensive. When Alfred Josh chose this place, I knew they wanted to show off. Seeing Xenia Judd confirmed my suspicions. Years later, Xenia Judd was decked out in high-end brands, 4-leaf clover, Cartier spikes, all while I was wearing Uniqlo, and a cheap 200 yuan Xiaomi bracelet. Alfred Josh wasn't doing any better. He didn't even have a job and couldn't afford Uniqlo. But what surprised me was that Carrie Petty wasn't wearing anything fancy today. He wore jeans and a white t-shirt, sitting confidently with his long legs stretched out. "Why isn't the food here yet?" I tried desperately to signal him to behave. He finally toned it down, stopping his wandering gaze and starting to sip lemonade. From the moment he arrived, Alfred Josh's eyes were fixed on him. A little flutter of the heart, can be translated as a little flutter of the heart, or a small spark of excitement, depending on the specific context. Finally, Alfred Josh spoke up, "Carrie Petty, what a coincidence. I didn't expect you to be here today. Zoe Michelson didn't mention anything to me." Alfred Josh's tone was rather sarcastic, and only then did Carrie Petty give him a proper look. "Oh, is that so? It's probably because we've been together a lot recently." "What did you say?" Alfred Josh's smile faltered a bit. I gathered my courage and added fuel to the fire, grabbing Carrie Petty's hand. "Yes, we were together last night. Not just last night, actually." Cough cough. I deliberately made a grand statement and enjoyed watching Alfred Josh's face turn ashen. He forced a smile, ready to flaunt his impressive academic achievements. "Where is Carrie Petty working now?" "I'm pursuing a direct PhD at XX Normal University, so I might have some connections in the future." Carrie Petty nonchalantly adjusted his napkin. "No need for connections. I mostly just dance. It probably won't be of any use to you." Alfred Josh. Carrie Petty's tone when he said Alfred Josh was particularly dismissive, and I nearly laughed. Surprisingly, Alfred Josh actually believed it, and even laughed. "Dancing is good too. It helps with physical fitness. You see, your physique is much better than mine. You could probably live off your looks, unlike us, who have to rely on our talents." Ha ha. I rolled my eyes so hard I thought they might get stuck. To make matters worse, Xenia Judd also chimed in, Carrie Petty, I like dancing too. Which place do you usually go to? Maybe we'll run into each other sometime. PFFT. Xenia Judd's place was clearly referring to nightclubs. Xenia Judd continued, if you need any help in the future, you can always ask me and Alfred Josh. Alfred Josh has extensive local connections and can cover you for performances at major forums and meetings. The appearance fee can go up to $500. Xenia Judd said this with such sincerity, her fake eyelashes fluttering. At this point, I couldn't help but look at Carrie Petty, the male lead of our Royal Ballet Troupe. In my view, Carrie Petty was a typical middle-class person, given the best education since childhood. Ballet is so tough. He had trained rigorously for 10 years, and for an Asian to reach this position, talent, skill, opportunity, and conditions are all indispensable. That's why he now commands thousands for a single performance, with an audience of thousands. 500 for an appearance fee. Who are they kidding? Facing such absurd remarks, Carrie Petty remained calm, even showing a look of yearning. Sure, I was a bit anxious. His response couldn't possibly hurt Alfred Josh and Xenia Judd. I hoped he would at least put on a show for me. Even just picking up a dish would have been fine. But he continued eating in his indifferent manner, showing no secret interaction. The money spent on 2 meals could have bought an iPhone 13, and he was here playing the role of a turtle. Where did that money go? Was it all spent on building his muscles? Just as I was about to call the waiter to settle the bill in despair, he suddenly spoke up. I'll cover today's meal. I tugged at his sleeve, signaling that I didn't want Alfred Josh and Xenia Judd to get anything for free. But he continued nonchalantly, if anyone has any comments or suggestions, they can relay them to my chef. My chef is very dedicated and listens carefully to every customer's feedback. At that moment, I felt like I heard a pin drop in the air. After a long pause, Xenia Judd looked a bit shocked. This place is your restaurant? Yes. Carrie Petty smiled slightly. XX is my dad. At that moment, Alfred Josh, and Xenia Judd were all stunned. Paying for the meal, a restaurant, the wealthiest person. Carrie Petty was actually the child of the richest person. As we left the restaurant, I was completely dazed. Not just me, Alfred Josh and Xenia Judd were equally stunned. I saw Xenia Judd's meticulously prepared Mercedes E300 looking dull, compared to the flashy Phantom that Carrie Petty's driver brought. Just when the scene became awkward, a voice suddenly came through. Hey, what are you thinking? Your shoelaces are untied. I snapped back to reality, watching Carrie Petty squat down in front of me, right in front of Alfred Josh and Xenia Judd. I instinctively tried to move away, but he firmly held onto my ankle. I didn't dare move. I watched him as he used his pale, long fingers to tie a bow on my canvas shoes. Finally, he stood up and smiled at me. It's the first time I've tied a woman's shoelaces. The treatment of a childhood friend is different. Let's go. Get in the car. At that moment, I felt like Xenia Judd's Jimmy Choo shoes were crying. Those were the hands of a ballet prince. Who wouldn't want these hands to touch them, eh? Which shoes wouldn't want these hands to touch them? Andy Warhol once said everyone has 15 minutes of fame in their lifetime. I'm an insignificant playwright, struggling to get a few scripts, a year without any credit, not even a name, let alone fame. But just a few hours ago, I felt like I became the leading character in my small world. I sat in the Rolls-Royce, staring blankly at the starry sky roof. The car was silent until I suddenly remembered something. How much was that number you gave me back then worth? Guess. How could I guess? They said it was worth 50, he said. Phew. I sighed with relief. Thank goodness. Seeing my relieved expression, he cheerfully added, 1,000. What the heck? Is it really worth 50,000? He casually rolled down the car window, lit a cigarette, and replied, not worth it. Heh. Is it worth it or not? I bought it for 50,000. If you sold it for 50, what do you think? He said. I inexplicably blushed. That was because I was young and didn't know its value. Carrie Petty snorted thoughtfully. You still don't. Is he saying I still don't know its value? I was in turmoil trying to defend myself when he suddenly said, I'm leaving. Where to? I asked, a bit dazed. The troupe is going to perform somewhere else next week. We have arrangements coming up, he said, taking a drag from his cigarette, deliberately blowing the smoke out the window, and then turning back to look at me, with a narrowed smile. Maybe I won't be back for a year or two. The starry sky seemed to darken in an instant, while I was lost in thought. The car arrived at my building. I blankly opened the car door. Before closing it, Carrie Petty suddenly called out to me, "Zoe Michelson." I was still a bit dazed. Huh? Why didn't you respond to me the last time you were online? I knew he was referring to that online game from years ago. Before I decided to quit playing the game for good, I had considered logging in to say goodbye to Carrie Petty. But when I logged in, I happened to see him chatting with Dale Vincent, the class beauty. In the surrounding channel, Carrie Petty had repeatedly mentioned wanting to pursue Dale Vincent in front of me. I always thought he was just bragging, but seeing how affectionate and enthusiastic he was toward Dale Vincent that day, I was inexplicably angry. Coincidentally, my mock exam results weren't ideal, and I wasn't planning to play the game anymore. Before logging off, I saw a message from Carrie Petty in my game friend list, but I didn't open it. Later, I never logged back in to check that message. Eventually, the game shut down, and all chat records were lost. I still don't know what Carrie Petty sent me. Standing outside the car, remembering how hurt I was seeing him chat with Dale Vincent, I feigned indifference and said, "Why should I respond to you? I'm not your little dog." With that, I turned and walked away into the dark alley, like a fleeing little dog. After I got home, I had a dream. In the dream, it was 10 years ago, when I first met Carrie Petty in the game. At that time, I was a level 100 player. He was only level 1, wearing the most expensive and flashy new outfit, standing in a white snowfield, looking both ridiculous and cool. That year, my parents divorced in real life, and the money problems made it very ugly. Rumors about my family troubles spread in school, and even to Carrie Petty's school next door, making me very self-conscious. Later, I was assigned to live with my dad. He worked in sales and was under a lot of work pressure. When he came home drunk, he would yell at me and throw things. I was often scared and didn't know what to do. Crying alone in bed at night, I wanted to find someone to talk to, but all my classmates were asleep. Only Carrie Petty was online late into the night, his family not interfering, and no one confiscating his phone. I don't know if he guessed anything, but during those years, whenever it was time for my dad to come home, he would forward me some jokes. Eventually, I couldn't fall asleep without his jokes. This interaction continued until one night, after he went abroad, when I posted a picture with Alfred Josh on social media. During that difficult time, no one knew about my feelings for Carrie Petty, not even myself. Later, Carrie Petty had several girlfriends, and everything ended just like that. I was quite timid, only daring to wait for a phase of Carrie Petty's adolescence, not daring to wait for his whole lifetime. Carrie Petty was leaving, especially after learning he was the son of a big shot. I didn't dare to initiate any interactions. These days, I focused entirely on writing scripts at my computer. What's that saying? Oh, to be the one who silently gets the whole moon. Whether writing scripts will get me the moon, I don't know, but spending 6,000 on Japanese cuisine for Carrie Petty, without pushing for results, would have me kicked out of the family tree, becoming a moon debt family instead of a moonlight family. One night, after falling asleep at my computer from exhaustion, I was suddenly awoken by a phone call. Carrie Petty said he was at a celebratory party for the troupe, and asked me to come pick him up. When I arrived at the venue, it was in a high-rise club in the city center, led by the staff. I entered the private room. In the center of the room, Carrie Petty was sprawled out, his long ballet-trained legs splayed out in an eye-catching manner. I was about to call him when he spoke to a few drunk people nearby. My girlfriend is here to take me home. All of you get lost. Whoa. The crowd erupted in cheers. At this moment, I heard someone say, "Carrie Petty, you don't even come to meet a girlfriend while drinking. Who doesn't know that you only care about games? Can your girlfriend tolerate you running around the world playing games every day?" "Yeah, is this your girlfriend? She doesn't look like it." Haha. These people probably thought I was plain. Everyone here was tall, well-dressed, and there were foreigners with blonde hair and blue eyes. I looked like I didn't belong to their world. I thought I had to cooperate, so I said, so what? I like men who are good at playing games. I like men who are good at playing games. PFFT. Someone laughed. He's good at games. Really? I had 3 lines of anger on my forehead, thinking of that level 1 newbie standing in the snow. Carrie Petty wasn't really good at games. He just spent a lot of money. I persisted, well, I like men who are good at games and ballet. Kiss her. The people at the table probably didn't expect me to be so bold, and pushed further. If you 2 kiss in front of us today, we'll believe it. Otherwise, Carrie Petty isn't allowed to leave tonight. What's a kiss? I can go further. A drunk beauty with a princess cut said, laughing and making a joke. I was a bit anxious. Carrie Petty calmly put his drink back on the table, and said, she's a good girl. Don't mess with her. 3 hours later, Carrie Petty and I finally managed to leave. When I came out, my ears were ringing. I never expected there would be so many taxis at 3 a.m. I saw a ride-share app showing 1 kilometers away, and I felt like a newbie. Is it okay if we go like this? I asked. Carrie Petty was lighting a cigarette, the orange flame reflecting on his face, and shook his head. I looked at his face, slightly red from the fear light. Are you okay? Not drunk, just a bit flushed. I said, I just ordered a car. Should I cancel it? It's cold. Wait a moment. It's fine. After he said that, there was a moment of awkwardness in the air. Why did you call me your girlfriend just now? He didn't answer, taking a drag from his cigarette and glancing at me. I felt like I had asked a stupid question. It was just a game. No need to take it seriously. I lowered my head and asked quietly, why did you say I'm a good girl? He glanced at me again, but still didn't reply. My voice grew softer, and under the influence of alcohol, I awkwardly continued, who's a bad girl? Anyone but you. Even if I'm slow on the uptake, I've written several romance TV dramas. At this point, if I still didn't get it, that would be a serious problem. I don't know if it was the fake alcohol with something mixed in, but my blood seemed to defy gravity. My head was a muddle, yet I felt clearer than ever. I seemed to see those joke collections Carrie Petty used to forward to me in middle school. I seemed to see us in our red wedding attire, bowing in front of the game's matchmaking deity. I can see him dancing freely in the center of the stage. Then he reaches out his hand towards me, with a graceful, please, gesture. Behind him, the background turns into a vast, snowy landscape. This was the first time he heard about me playing an online game, so he registered a new account, a level 1 newbie, dressed in the flashiest outfit in the server, standing at the edge of the world. He mentioned that year his parents also got divorced. While handling the divorce paperwork, they met another couple going through the same thing. In their casual chat, he learned that their daughter was in the same school as him, and in the same grade. That year was quite oppressive for him, filled with the dramas of a wealthy family, even more so than mine. Young Carrie Petty, driven by curiosity, wanted to get my contact details to see who I was. Given our connection, we ended up playing games together for many years, and he even said I was his only friend. Suddenly, I was overwhelmed with embarrassment. I'm not a good girl. Carrie Petty gave me a cold stare. His gaze was so sharp it almost made me cry. But you said you were going to pursue Dale Vincent. Just kidding, he said, taking a drag on his cigarette. But I'm very ordinary, I said urgently. I can't write Swan Lake. I can't transform into a swan. I can't count the 32 fouet turns. It's fine. I've liked you for so many years, and no, you're not that great. I felt Carrie Petty was so mean. He had to insult me even when confessing. I puffed up my cheeks angrily. Stop saying that. I also know that your taste in men is quite poor. Marrying that Alfred Josh guy who's a... What Carrie Petty said after that is unclear to me. At that moment, my last thought was that I was single. Whether Carrie Petty truly liked me or not, I was single. I reached out and took the cigarette from Carrie Petty's mouth, stood on tiptoe, and kissed him. He was incredibly strong. No wonder female ballet dancers could perform complex moves with him, as if he were weightless. At 3 in the morning, after drinking, both of us were drunk and sleepy. Our impulses overwhelmed our reason. Carrie Petty was quite skilled, not like a pure-hearted little puppy. With the bedroom door closed, the scene inside was as spectacular as a musical. We were both fresh out of school, just past the most naive stage. The concerns of pure-hearted young men and women were things we didn't care about. In short, everything was just right. It was both fulfilling and harmonious. The next morning, we woke up together in my old, narrow bed. The bed was against the window, and the curtains didn't block the light. We woke up to the sunlight and could see each other clearly. I felt a bit embarrassed, but Carrie Petty was very relaxed. He acted as if he was back at his own home, leaning lazily against the headboard of the bed, lighting a cigarette, and reaching for the water cup on my bedside table with his strong, fair arm. Hey, don't drink that. He raised an eyebrow at me. I wrapped myself in clothes and got up. I'll go make you a fresh pot. He started looking around my home. The house was an old one left to me by my grandmother, built in the 1980s. Very old. Legally, it was my pre-marriage property with Alfred Josh. Alfred Josh had no house, so after we married, we lived here. During the 30-day divorce cooling-off period, there were no traces of Alfred Josh left in the house. I listened to the kettle boiling, and Carrie Petty's cigarette was half burnt out. You grew up here, didn't you? Yeah, how could you tell? The wall is covered with your awards and photos, Carrie Petty said lazily. I returned with the kettle and saw him opening an old notebook I had kept in the bedside drawer. I quickly grabbed it. Hey, don't look. Carrie Petty asked vaguely through the cigarette, is there a secret? I felt awkward. There's no secret. Are you bored? Maybe you should play on the computer. He smirked, with the same expression he had when he wanted to eat whitebait and lanternfish. You want me to play this? He pointed at the old computer from what was probably my middle school days. I had been using a laptop for writing scripts for years, and the desktop computer had long been idle. It even had a cloth on it, with a silly note, write scripts well and become richer than Carrie Petty. His smile grew wider. Want to know the fastest way to get rich? I listened closely. What, are you going to invest in me? Help me write a biography? Carrie Petty stubbed out his cigarette and waved me over with his bare upper body. Come here, I'll tell you quietly. I walked over. He was about to speak. Then there was a knock on the door. Who is it? I opened the door. It was Alfred Josh. Alfred Josh looked a bit haggard as the door opened. He frowned. Why do you smell like smoke? I didn't answer his question, speaking with indifference. What are you here for? Oh, just passing by. Thought I'd come and check. Just as I was about to curse him out, a pair of long legs emerged from the bedroom. Carrie Petty was wearing long pants and lazily leaning against the door frame, his abdominal muscles clearly defined. Without needing to say anything, Alfred Josh's expression changed instantly. What are you doing here? Zoe Michelson, you're really with him, aren't you ashamed? I was enraged. Who's being shameless, you or me? Don't think I don't know about your mess with Xenia Judd. The seat number 35 at the Do Tang Internet Cafe at 11:30. Remember? Alfred Josh looked shocked. So you knew all along. Is that why you proposed divorce? I calmed down and sneered, looking back at Carrie Petty. Sorry, I'll handle this. Guessing I didn't want to be embarrassed, Carrie Petty gave me an okay hand gesture and casually returned to the room, closing the bedroom door behind him. My expression turned sour. What's the point of talking about this now? Alfred Josh was anxious. Even if I'm at fault, do you need to demean yourself like this? How could someone like him be sincere to you? It's just that you two shared some gaming memories from when you were young. You don't really want to marry him, do you? I didn't understand why Alfred Josh's words made me feel so hurt. Maybe it was because his words touched a nerve. I gritted my teeth. So what if we get married? Marriage isn't a magic insurance policy. I've been married to you. And so what? You. Alfred Josh's face darkened immediately. After a few seconds, he started cursing. Don't think I don't know. You've been planning this all along, right? That notebook on the bedside table. You think I really didn't see it? It's all about you and him. I thought you two were done. And these 5 years. I couldn't hear clearly what he said next. Because he was so furious he began smashing things in the living room. The kettle and teacups I had just used were hurled to the floor with loud crashes. I instinctively shivered and stepped back. At that moment, Carrie Petty, hearing the commotion, came out of the room, scooped me up in his arms, pressing my head to his chest to shield my view. Don't be afraid. I'm here. Don't be afraid. After saying that, he kicked Alfred Josh. Don't you know Zoe Michelson has PTSD from seeing her father smash things? Get out. Alfred Josh got what he deserved. A good beating. After he left, I crouched on the floor among the broken pots and pans, unable to stop crying. Last year, my father passed away, which is why I decided to marry Alfred Josh so quickly in secret. After all, it's too hard to hold on alone. I just wanted a little relaxation, to rely on Alfred Josh as a support in my life. Clearly, I was wrong. With my father's image fading in my mind, the wounds from my original family had no chance of healing. Like now, when I see things being smashed, I can't help but cry. I sat on the floor, hugging my head and trying hard to control my tears. Carrie Petty crouched down and handed me a tissue. If you want to cry, just let it out. It'll feel better. I know I want to cry, but I can't. I sobbed, and he held me in his arms. We stayed in the midst of the mess for who knows how long, holding each other and eventually kissing, until the kiss made me feel slightly dizzy. My emotions calmed down, and I gently pushed him away. He said in a deep voice, when I first met you, you were just like this. I was surprised. First met me, in the game fighting monsters. He gave me a side glance. No, at the Civil Affairs Bureau. You were there that day. I never knew. Carrie Petty's dark eyes reflected my face. Yes, that day. Your parents were arguing outside the Civil Affairs Bureau, drawing a crowd. Your parents were screaming hysterically, and no one noticed you standing alone in the corner, except for me and my mom. Carrie Petty later told me that was when he started paying attention to me. That day, I neither cried nor caused a scene. Instead, I stood in the corner, observing everything calmly, even jotting down notes with a pen. Some people were surprised to see me, calmly standing in place while my mom was being cursed as a money-grubbing adulterer, and my dad had blood all over his face. Someone came over to ask what I was doing. I remember, as a middle schooler, holding a drawing board in one hand and a pen in the other. I pretended to be calm, gathering material. They want to argue. You want to watch the show. I'm just noting everything down to write a melodramatic TV series later, and everyone will be happy. Now when I think back, I can still remember the shocked expression of the person who heard me. I couldn't help but smile. I was quite impressive, when I was young, much more than now. Carrie Petty, at that time, I thought you were my goddess. I looked at him. So, after getting to know me, discovering that I'm just an amateur, do you regret it? He stroked his chin. Indeed, but back then, it was because I was weak and didn't dare to defy my parents. So I admired your strength. Now that I'm stronger and you're a bit weaker, isn't it just right for us to match? I laughed. So, are you going to date me? Carrie Petty looked almost ready to explode. Don't I deserve it? I'm very clingy. If you keep running around the world for performances, I won't be able to handle it. He seemed thoughtful, his high nose coming down, his profile perfect like a Greek sculpture. I never expected Carrie Petty to be so determined. Leaving the band is indeed not a small matter, but I don't mind, as long as I first tell my mom. Oh, no, no need. I thought he was going to give up his future for me, and quickly advised against it. A little flutter of the heart can be translated as a little flutter of the heart, or a small spark of excitement, depending on the context. Choose the expression that best fits the situation. In a few days, I'll be going to the suburbs in Carrie Petty's car to visit his mother at their standalone villa. His mother looks just like him, with a hint of mixed heritage. What surprised me was that, even after all these years, his mother still remembered what I said at the Civil Affairs Bureau that day, and remembered it quite fondly. I learned that while his mother is also in business, her field is in the cultural and artistic sectors. Her personality is very easygoing, and her insights are not comparable to those of nouveau rich. I heard that Carrie Petty doesn't want to continue with this world tour, and his mother seemed even happier about it than I was. But what I felt more from his mother's response to Carrie Petty's decision was respect. Before we left that day, his mother spoke to me, privately. Zoe Michelson, over the years, both you and Carrie Petty have had regrets and wounds about your families. Although Carrie Petty has been in other relationships over the years, and I've heard a bit about your situation, I've always felt that life is long, and no one can immediately get what they want. The same goes for love and happiness. As long as you two get along well, I believe a happy new family can heal the wounds of the two unhappy families before. Hearing his mother's words, I could no longer hold back my tears. They flowed freely. As I left the villa's yard, I saw Carrie Petty, dressed in black casual clothes, wiping the car windows with a white cloth. Today, he didn't bring a driver. When he usually had a driver, he would be smoking at this time. When he saw me coming out, his black hair was flying in the wind. Let's go. Get in the car. I smiled and agreed. In those few seconds walking down the steps, I envisioned our long life together. For instance, we both like spicy food, but the flavor in H City is rather sweet. Maybe in the future, we could leave the city where we grew up, leave all unpleasant memories behind, and move to a new place with a thriving cultural and artistic scene to start a new life. As I got into the car, he saw me smiling. This time, he asked me, "What are you smiling about?" Smiling because love comes so quickly, just like a whirlwind. I heard him curse under his breath. Is this fast? I've been pursuing you for almost 10 years. I nodded thoughtfully. Yes, but you've been inconsistent. Inconsistent for 10 years, Carrie Petty murmured. I replied, well then, even if you've pursued me for 10 years, you'll need to cherish me twice as much from now on. He proudly whistled. That's just stating the obvious. The car drove down Sunset Boulevard, the road home stretching endlessly. The sunlight fell on my eyelashes, and on our joined hands. He still doesn't know what I wrote in my diary, and I don't know what message he sent me that day, but it's okay. We have a lifetime to slowly share with each other. I opened the dust-covered diary and brushed off the dust. It was filled with every task we completed and every map we explored together during high school. At that time, I didn't dare to openly say I liked him, but every stroke on the pages was full of my anticipation for our life together. The diary stopped at a day 6 years ago, and today, I can finally look at it with new eyes, because Carrie Petty and I got married. That day, Alfred Josh burst in, interrupting him with, "Do the tasks," just like when we first met in the game and went to the matchmaking temple. Translated as our wedding. On our wedding night, he looked at my diary, his profile sharply defined by the floor lamp, and his smile was warm. His beautiful hand picked up a pen, and added new content at the end of my unfinished diary. October the 1st, 2021. Sunny, I married Carrie Petty. He said the message I missed while I was busy logging off was, Zoe Michelson, if you're too busy with exams to play games, that's fine. I'll accompany you offline from now on. The story has concluded. Please subscribe to the channel to stay updated with the latest content. A large number of novels are updated daily.